Okay, we're going to listen to Malice, Not Required. I haven't released it yet. It's going to be a new book. And I'm not sure where I'm going to fly yet. There's a good place. Rome?
Malice not required. The greatest dangers to liberty lurk in insidious encroachment by men of zeal, well-meaning but without understanding. Justice Louis D. Brandeis, Homestead versus United States, 1928. The promise. There is a deal at the foundation of America. It is not written in any single clause of the Constitution, but it runs through all of them, like rebar through concrete.
Fly in Paris.
The deal is this. The government may take your liberty, but only under extraordinary conditions. It must prove that you did something wrong. It must prove that you knew it was wrong, or at least that you intended to do the thing that turned out to be wrong. It must prove these things to the satisfaction of 12 of your peers in a public proceeding, where you can confront your accusers and challenge their evidence. And if the government cannot clear every one of those hurdles, you walk free. Not because the system is soft, because the system was designed to be hard on the government. This was not an accident of drafting. The men who wrote the Bill of Rights had lived under a system where the Crown could imprison subjects on vague charges, locked up without trial, and punish them for offenses they did not know existed. The 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th Amendments were not aspirational poetry. They were structural engineering. They were designed to make it difficult for the state to put a citizen in a cage. The architecture rested on a few load-bearing assumptions. First, the criminal law would be limited in scope, confined to conduct that was obviously morally wrong. Murder, theft, assault, fraud. These were acts that any functioning adult would recognize as criminal without consulting a lawyer. The Latin term for this is malo in se, wrong in itself. The criminal law would deal with things that were wrong in themselves, and the civil law would handle everything else. Second, the criminal law would be legible. Citizens should be able to read the law, understand the law, and conform their conduct to the law. This is the foundational requirement of the rule of law itself. You cannot obey a command you cannot comprehend. If the law is so complex that compliance requires a team of specialists, it is no longer a law in any meaningful sense. It is a trap. Third, the criminal punishment would require criminal intent. The legal term is mens rea, guilty mind. To be guilty of a crime, you must have intended to do the thing that the law prohibits. You must have known, or reasonably should have known, that your conduct was unlawful. Far from a technicality, this is the moral foundation of the entire system. Punishment without intent is not justice. It is arbitrary power. Fourth, that the process of determining guilt would be public, adversarial, controlled by the community, not by the government. The jury trial was not a procedural nicety. It was the founders' answer to the most dangerous question in political philosophy. Who decides whether the state may take a citizen's freedom? Their answer was emphatic. Not the state. The people decide. 12 citizens, drawn from the community, hearing the evidence in the open, rendering a verdict that the government must accept. This was the final check on government power, the mechanism that made all the other rights meaningful. That was the deal. Limited criminal law, legible criminal law, criminal intent required, guilt determined by jury trial, 4 load-bearing pillars. Remove any one of them, and the structure becomes unstable. Remove all 4, collapse. All 4 are gone. The betrayal. The collapse did not happen overnight. It did not happen through a single act of tyranny or a dramatic seizure of power. It happened gradually, incrementally, with the full participation of every branch of government and both political parties over the course of more than a century. It happened so slowly that most Americans never noticed, and it happened under the cover of good intentions. The criminal code expanded because legislators discovered that creating new crimes was the easiest way to signal that they were doing something about a problem. Drug abuse, create new drug crimes, corporate fraud, create new fraud statutes, environmental damage, attach criminal penalties to environmental regulations, immigration, gun violence, consumer protection, workplace safety, online harassment. The answer was always the same: make it a crime. The result was compounded over decades. Not the most dedicated legal scholars in the country can tell you how many federal crimes exist. The intent requirement for prosecutors found it inconvenient. Proving that a defendant knowingly broke the law is hard. Proving that a defendant engaged in conduct that happened to violate a regulation he had never heard of. So Congress, at the urging of regulatory agencies, began passing criminal statutes without intent requirements, strict liability offenses, public welfare offenses, crimes where the question is not whether you meant to break the law, but simply whether you did the thing the law prohibits, regardless of whether you knew the law existed, regardless of whether a reasonable person would have recognized the conduct, regardless of whether the conduct caused any harm at all. The jury trial disappeared because the system made it irrational to ask for one. When a prosecutor can charge you with 20 overlapping counts, each carrying its own mandatory minimum sentence, the difference between accepting a plea deal and going to trial is not the difference between guilt and innocence. It is the difference between 2 years, between probation and a life sentence, between keeping your family intact and losing everything. Under these conditions, the right to a trial is not a right. It is a luxury that only the wealthy or the desperate can afford. Everyone else takes the deal. 97% of federal defendants take the deal. And the human cost of all this, cost to the people who get fed into the machine, is treated as acceptable as the price. Betrayal. The collapse did not happen overnight. It did not happen.
Okay. Alright, I'm starting over.
Malice not required. The greatest dangers to liberty lurk in insidious encroachment by men of zeal, well-meaning but without understanding. Justice Louis D. Brandeis, Olmsted versus United States. The promise. There's a deal in the foundation. It is not written in any single clause of the Constitution, but it runs through all of them like rebar. The government can take your liberty, but only under structural engineering. They were designed to make it difficult for the state to put a citizen in a cage. The architecture rested on a few load-bearing assumptions. First, you defined a conduct that was obviously morally wrong. Without consulting a lawyer. This is moral, wrong in itself. The law would deal with things that were wrong in themselves, and the civil law would handle everything else. Second law would deal with things that were wrong in themselves. The citizen should handle everything else. Under second law would deal with things that were wrong in themselves. The citizen should handle everything else. And second law would deal with things that were wrong in themselves. The citizen should handle everything else. And second law would deal with things that were wrong in themselves.